Hi, hey, hello. How's it going? It's Emily. And today, my friends, is what I hope will be a fun video. So, I'm going to be doing a 40 books to read by the time I'm 40. Now, it won't actually be 40 individual books. Some of these will be super long series. Now, for those of you who have been around here for a while, you might recall that 3 years ago, I posted a video talking about the 35 books I wanted to read before I turned 35. Now, 33-year-old Emily, she was young, she was naive, and I had 2 years to complete that list, and a list that I put a bunch of long series on. Now, we're going to make some of the same mistakes today, but if all goes as planned, I am posting this on my 36th birthday, so I have 4 years to work on this list. So I'm giving myself more time. I'm dwindling down the number of long series, but I still wanted to put some long series on here. So, and I want to do it for the same reason I did initially. It just seems not a challenge. It just seems like it's not a challenge to put 40 standalone books I want to read by the time I turn 40, because I'm going to read way more than 40 books by the time I turn 40. Or at least that's the plan. And so, I could put 40 books that I plan to read this year on the list and call it a day, but that just doesn't seem fun, does it? That doesn't seem like a challenge. And so I do want to have long series on here, one, to make it a challenge, but also two, to kind of give some indication of where things are going in terms of the long series that I'll be reading in the coming years. So it's kind of an indication of that, but also just something to challenge me. And I put some long series on the list when I was 33, despite the fact that I knew I had a lot of FairyLoots and standalones that I already had on my TBR that were going to be a higher priority than starting new series and continuing series. So I would love to wrap up a bunch of series and dwindle that number down significantly. The list of or the number of series that I'm in the middle of. I would like to dwindle that list down significantly before I start some of these longer series. And so I'm giving myself some time to do that this time, or at least hopefully that's the goal. So actually, this next year could very much be filled by catching up on my FairyLoots and then making sure I stay caught up on those. Catching up on my standalones, adding in, I know some new releases are going to be thrown in there every now and then, and continuing series that I'm in the middle of. That is going to take up everything until, for a while. Like, I think at least the next year will, and there'll still be stuff after that falls in those categories, right? Like, I'll still be getting some standalones at library book sales and whatever. I'll still have FairyLoots coming in. There will still be series that I want to continue that, the next book has come out and now I can continue that too. You know what I mean? Like, these will still be continuing past a year from now, but my goal for a year or so from now is to be in a place where I actually can kind of want to start some new series. So, with that in mind, let's talk about some things that I would like to read by the time I turn 40, or at least make significant progress in by the time I turn 40. The list is on my phone here, so that's what I'll be consulting. So we do start off with the series, okay? So bear with me here. So we've got some sci-fi series, and I have put on Red Rising. So I have not read any of the Red Rising books, any of the Red Rising world. Is the fourth one and kind of the second era of this world coming out this year, next year? I'm hoping that by the time I actually get to these, is that the last one? If anyone is a Red Rising fan, let me know if the one that is going to be coming out in the relatively near future, is that the last one? Because it's entirely possible that by the time I actually get to this, it could be a series that I can just binge the whole world, right? So that would be kind of fun. I also have the Expanse series on here, which is a completed series and is a very long series. And this one just seems so much fun, and I feel like it could be fun to watch the show as well. So couple of long sci-fi series or worlds to get into. I also have the Lady Astronauts series. So I have the first three. I found them at various used bookstores for relatively inexpensive, and so I knew I wanted to read this series. I read her standalone and really enjoyed it. So I really would like to get into this historical reimagining of women being in the space program. I think that would be so cool. So I would like to add that to the list. I believe there are 4. I'm not sure if any more are planned or not, but so those are some of the sci-fi series I want to focus on. I figure it could be nice and the reason I'm doing 3 of each of these is because if I'm spending the next year catching up and doing, continuing series, catching up on Fairy Loots, etc., and I start these when I'm 37, I figure it could be nice to have 1 sci-fi series, 1 fantasy series, and maybe a romantasy series going on. So the next set are fantasy series that I would like to focus on. So the first one is A Realm of the Elderling. I read the first 2 trilogies, so I'm on the 3rd trilogy, which is what I'm putting a picture up here. Is the one that I'm actually on is the one that I have a picture up of here. So that's the first book in the 3rd trilogy. So I'd like to read that one and then continue with the next 2 series. I also would like to focus on the Cosmere. So the Brandon Sanderson that I've been reading recently has been his standalones because that's been easier. It's been an easier pill to swallow than starting the Stormlight Archives, right? Like that's kind of intimidating to have 5,000 plus page books to stare me down. But I would like to, I've read the first Era Mistborn, read half of the second Era Mistborn, and then I haven't read any Stormlight. So I'd like to focus on some of those. Plus that I still have Isles of the Emberdark. There's some other stuff, his short story collection that came out recently. So I've got some other things to focus on there as well. And some of the other novellas he's already published and etc. So focusing on some more of the Cosmere stuff would be something I would like to do in that time. I also would like to get into the First Law world, which involves a couple of trilogies and a handful of standalones. So I would like to get involved in that world, see if I like it. So that's kind of the 3rd fantasy series that I would like to focus on. Again, none of these 6 are things that I have plans for eminently, but I'm hoping to before too long relative to the time scale of this video. So as far as other series that I'd like to throw in the mix there that are larger worlds, I'd like to focus on the Shadowhunter world. So I started and read the first 3 of the first series in the Shadowhunter world, and I'd like to go back. I'd like to start over and do a different reading order to continue on. So that is a plan that I have at some point. I also would like to be reading through the Massverse. Now, this one is actually one I have planned for this year. So I've already put 1 vlog episode out of me reading the Massverse. It's a handful of videos back on my channel if you missed it. And I'm planning to do a complete reread of the Massverse before her book releases in October. So 2 books a month, 1 vlog a month through October, and then I'll be caught up to read her new release. So I also would like to read the Lady of Darkness series as well. This is, how many books are in this one? Is it 5, 6, 7 books? Whatever. This is also a longer one. But it sounds so fun, sounds right up my alley. I have the first few Fairy Loot editions, and so I'd like to get into this series. So that one's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that one as well. So I also wanted to throw in some romances in there because, of course, I'm kind of trying to divide this list into a bunch of different types of things that I would like to read over the next 4 years. So, of course, I had to include some romance. And I wanted to include the Chestnut Spring series. Again, I have the Fairy Loot editions of these, so I'd like to read those. And I absolutely love romance. Feel like I'm going to love this series. So want to go ahead and read those. I also want to read the Hades and Persephone saga. Again, ones I have Fairy Loot editions of, but have been intimidated to start because there's like two different companion series here, or they're the companion series that I have the Hades and Persephone saga, but I think there are also books in this world from his perspective. That's like a whole other series. Anyway, we'll see what I do with that one, but I would like to get into that one as well. I also put one kind of weird slot here. I just in general put Formula One romances. So the one I'm putting up on the screen right now is the second book in the Dirty Air series by Lauren Asher. This is the one that I'm on for that series, just to kind of represent what I mean. So this is the next one in that series that I need to read, but I would like to become a Formula One romance girly. I would like to become a Formula One romance aficionado. And so I would like to read quite a few Formula One romances because I think that would be super fun. I love Formula One, so I just figured it'd be fun to have a good repertoire of them under my belt to be able to make recommendations for others who would like to get into Formula One romances. So I'd like to be able to provide that service, and so that requires me to actually read a bunch of Formula One romances. So I'd like to put that on as a separate thing to just keep in mind to focus on, you know what I mean? So I also want to put a few graphic novel / manga series. So Saga, I still have not finished the Saga series, and at this point I need to start over. So I need to start over, catch back up to where I was, and then finish the Saga series. I haven't really talked about this much on my channel, but I've actually read the first few volumes of Berserk. One of my friends is a huge Berserk fan and has kind of given me a push to start that. And so I read the first few volumes. We caught up and chatted about it. And so I'd like to keep going with that so that I can continue to talk to her about the Berserk series. So that'll be a thing, an ongoing thing coming up that I'm actually in the middle of. I also would like to put One Piece on this list, which I know is quite an undertaking. But I feel like I would at least like to get started on the One Piece series and be kind of far into that. Maybe by the time I turn 40, we'll see how far I can get onto that. So those are some of the long series and things that I would like to focus on. I also would like to read more classics. So these were actually on the original list. And I'm hoping that if I'm in a place to start a bunch of series, that will also kind of help push me to be in a place to read some classics, because those have never been super high on my list, given everything I already have on my TBR, but I would like to read some classics. So we're going to go through some of the ones that are highest on my list. One is Alice in Wonderland. Would absolutely love to read Alice in Wonderland, and I think I'll have a fun time reading that one. I also would like to read all of Jane Austen's works. I've read Pride and Prejudice, but I haven't read anything else by Jane Austen, so I would like to have that be one entry here. Just in general, Jane Austen works, or maybe just at least have read a few by the time I'm 40. I'd like to put Middlemarch on this list as well. Seems like it'll be right up my alley. The Count of Monte Cristo. Seems like a fun adventure story. I love me a good fun adventure story, so I wanted to put that on here. Wuthering Heights is also on this list, still from when I was 33. The Picture of Dorian Gray is another classic that I would like to read. I'd like to get more into Sherlock Holmes. I've read a couple of random ones, but I would like to be more systematic about reading some Sherlock Holmes. Dracula. I would like to read Dracula and have a fun vampire vlog. I would also like to read The Bell Jar. That's another one that I would like to put on this list. So throwing in some classics there. I'd also like to throw in some memoirs because I feel like that would be a fun thing to throw in here. And some of these nonfiction ones as well are ones that I plan to get to in more closely in the relatively near future. So I've been in a better habit this year of selecting a nonfiction, and then I used to pause my fiction reading when I turned to nonfiction, and I think that's why I never really reached for nonfiction because I didn't want to pause my fiction reading. Because I'd be like, well, I just want to focus on one book at a time. I'll just pick a nonfiction and then just read that. So instead, my approach has been to just read a chapter or two. Even if it takes me longer to get through a nonfiction, I'm at least getting in a good habit of making progress. So some of these might actually be read, in the relatively near future, because I do plan on continuing that habit and reading some more nonfiction. So let's start with some memoirs. Know My Name. Definitely want to read that one. Making It So. I love Patrick Stewart and would love to read Making It So. Failing Up. Absolutely love Leslie Odom Jr. and would like to read this one. Being Mortal is another one that I'm intrigued by, so would like to read that. 107 Days is going to be a tough one. I never managed to read Hillary Clinton's book that came out after her loss in the 2016 election. And yeah, this one still hurts too. So, I mean, there's obviously a lot of feelings I still have around the election, none of them good. And so, this one's going to be a gut punch, but I do have a copy and would like to read it. So maybe by the time I'm 40, I'll be up for reading it. And then some other general nonfiction. So I'd like to read The New Map. This is a climate nonfiction. Another climate nonfiction is What's Left. So that's another one that I would like to read. And I've been making my way through some climate nonfiction and environmental nonfiction in general with my environmental book club on Meetup, so that's been good. I also would like to read Hood Feminism. This is a carryover from the list when I was 33. But again, I wasn't in the better habit at 33 of just, instead of giving up fiction to read nonfiction, just reading little bits at a time. So I'm hoping that I will have better luck with actually getting through some of these. In Defense of Witches is another one I would like to read. And I think that could be a fun one to read in the fall. And 400 Souls is another one that I'd like to read, as well as the new Jim Crow is also on the list. I would like to read The Library, A Fragile History. This is a history of libraries, which sounds amazing. So definitely would like to read that. Stories Are Weapons. This one seems really cool. I would like to read books about how powerful stories and storytelling are, and so that falls into this category, as well as The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Another one that is kind of in that same vein from what I gather, and sounds great. I'd also like to read Abundance, and hopefully, maybe I should have put that up with, it's not explicitly an environmental nonfiction, but at least in that vein. And then I would also like to read on corruption in America. So those are some of the nonfictions I have on the list, and I have high hopes that some of those at least will be checked off the list before too long, and that I'll continue to make progress on that list. And then, reading through the Massverse will also happen, but some of the others, it might take a while. So I think it could be fun to do updates on my birthday each year. But don't be surprised when I come next year and say I haven't made a ton of progress on this list, because ultimately that is actually the plan. But I'm making it part of the plan this time, instead of just hoping that I will add all of these long series and all of these classics and nonfictions onto the list on top of everything else I already had planned to read. So we're challenging myself. We're pushing myself a little bit. Hopefully that'll be a fun challenge, a fun thing to do. So let me know. Have you read any of these? Let me know your thoughts. If you've made a list of 30 before 30 or 35 before 35, or if you're older like me and you have a 40 by 40, let me know. I would love to watch those as well. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more bookish content, and I will also link my Instagram down below, as well as my Etsy shop. Just a few designs up there, but hopefully we'll get some more rolling out. And then my Pango store, I'll also link that down below if you're interested in checking out what I have for sale on my Pango used bookstore. And then I'll also leave more information below about how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.